Hello, welcome to Eric on the Last Taboo. This is your host, Eric Diaz, and today we are joined by my friend, Adam Abramowitz.
You got it.
I got it. I got the name right. Got pronunciation. All right. And now we're Eric on the Last Taboo. Typically, we've been focusing on mental illness, but now I want to branch out into addiction. And I know addiction is a form of mental illness, but it's not what we usually discuss with, say, schizoaffective or bipolar disorder. And now Adam. So first off, thank you for coming on the show.
Sure.
And I was wondering, where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay. Yeah. And what brought you to Metro Atlanta?
Metro Atlanta, I moved here in '96 with my family. My father got a job out here selling packaging.
That was very similar to me. Lockheed downsized in California and brought us out to Marietta.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me what were you addicted to, and when did it start?
I would say, that's a good question. I would say I'm a heroin addict, but I'm also an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. I developed the addictive personality and addictive trait when I was in my first year at college. I went to college on a football scholarship, and up until that point, I'd smoked occasionally weed, and I drank on the weekends and stuff. And
what college did you go to?
University of Richmond in Virginia.
Oh, okay. And what was your position on the football field?
Defensive end.
Oh, okay. And what role do you think it takes a lot of discipline to be to play at the college level? And what role does the whole obsessive nature, always going the extra mile, do you think that has anything to do with your addictive personality?
Yeah, I mean, in high school I had a goal. My goal was I want to go to college for free. I want to earn a scholarship. And so my focus in high school was being the best athlete I could, and also just I loved video games too, so just enjoying myself while also putting work in for this higher purpose.
Okay, and what role did you start off with heroin, or was there an injury that led to pain medicine, or did you just go straight into the heroin?
Well, it happened like this. I get to college, realize the dream. Now I'm going to school for free. I'm a collegiate athlete, but I didn't know what was next. I didn't know. So, we were getting drug tested. Weren't allowed to smoke weed anymore. Barely was. Being on a football team, you're working constantly, physically lifting weights and practicing and going to class and all this stuff. And it was, once I made it there, I was just now I'm here. I'm just going to enjoy myself. Mm-hmm. I couldn't smoke weed. And I just I started doing things to, I guess, escape.
Oh, okay. And when I worked at Kennesaw State, I worked in the food court, and I'd see the athletes there, especially in the summer. I'd see them; they were required to swipe in and eat a certain amount.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
How did you make your weight, or just keep up your meal regimen? Because I don't see a lot of heroin addicts eating a lot.
I didn't, because at that point I was on a lot of Adderall. I was taking 80 milligrams of Adderall a day, and so my weight was not being. They used to have me go to breakfast club at 6 a.m. It was a little thing they called for guys that were underweight, because I just wasn't eating because I was always on amphetamines, and that I didn't realize it was an issue at all, because they were prescribed to me and they helped me keep my energy and do the class show up. I wouldn't say I did the classwork. Show up. I didn't really show up for class either, now that I think about it. It kept me awake and able to show up for workouts and physical activities.
Did the university have any resources available for athletes struggling with addiction?
Yeah, that was the thing. When I finally ended up failing a drug test my sophomore year, they had a whole thing set up to help me. It was incredible. Did not utilize it, Mm-hmm. I adhered to what they were saying, but yeah, they had protocols in place to help athletes. At least in my case, at my school, student athletes that were struggling.
So it's like the classic education metaphor: you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
Okay, so the sources were available, you just didn't utilize it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then also, how long were you able to graduate from Richmond?
No. I ended up leaving my junior year.
And was that because of the drugs?
Yeah. Well, I ended up being sent home to get sober. By that point, I was taking painkillers regularly, Adderall every day, smoking when I could, cocaine, whatever I could do. I always needed felt like I needed something to be okay. So I failed a drug test, and they put all those protocols in place. I went home for a month before I went back to summer school to actually show up for those programs. And when I was home for that month, all I did was use OxyContin. And I didn't know I was addicted or anything. Like I didn't think I wasn't even on my. What do they say? Like, you don't know stuff you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah,
but you know what you think you know.
So what happened?
Might not be accurate.
Yeah, so I get back to school after a month home of doing oxys every day, and by the second day, my body was in full withdrawal, and I had a drug test on a Friday, and it was Thursday, and I was sweating. I was in class. I was in my dorm room. I hadn't, just shaking and what's happening to me, and I knew I had a drug test on Friday. And if I'd have failed that drug test, I'd have lost my scholarship. My scholarship was a $48,000 scholarship. Mm-hmm. And even though I knew that, I left my dorm room and drove to my drug dealer in downtown Richmond to get high. So that was my first encounter with true powerlessness. Was like, I know I can't do this, but I'm doing it anyway. And I took the pills. I called my dad. He called the team physician. I met with my head coach the next day, and he was like, what do you want to do? Like, you've got, how can we help? Like, what's going on here? And he afforded me the chance to take the year off, go home, and get myself together. And I left school for that year to go home and get sober. Did
you ever come back?
I did. I ended up going home. I got on a Suboxone as a program to like help alleviate the cravings for opiates. Mm-hmm. I just began to spiral downwards still. I would save the Suboxones. I would take pills on the week. I'd do whatever I could to stay high, and eventually I was just depressed in my parents' attic, unable to function. And so they checked me into my first rehab. I went to my first rehab at 21 years old. And that's when I learned about what alcoholism and addiction was and all that stuff.
Oh, okay. And Suboxone, what are your views? I know that's a controversial subject in people in recovery. What are your views on Suboxone?
My views about Suboxone is I take the stance that, anything's better than putting a needle in your arm.
Oh, okay.
A lot of us are can I cuss on here?
Go ahead.
We're just dumb. We're not very smart. We'll put stuff in there without thinking about it. And I don't know. In my stance, Suboxone, I think, at least from my own experience, I have to learn for myself. So I'm not against it, but I'm also not for it.
I got you. Yeah, because I'm alcoholic, never had a problem with opiates, but I could not have stayed sober the first 6 months. I think it's naltrexone.
Naltrexone.
I could not have done it. They would have had to keep me locked up without that because my cravings were so bad.
Oh yeah, it's so tough. It's like, it's really hard.
Yeah, so ideally you do it without it, but if you need it, you're going to die if you keep shooting up. So
yeah, I
see where you're coming from.
If I was a physician, let's just play hypothetically.
Dr. Abramowitz.
Yeah, this I'm an amateur scientist over here. So like if it were me and somebody came into me was detoxing off of heroin and wanted to stop using heroin, a Suboxone protocol wouldn't be a bad idea as long as it was aligned with mindfulness practices and also introducing what recovery represents, the philosophy of it, the principles of it, and the ideology behind it. Now, I was just given Suboxone and told, go to meetings. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that means. I didn't know what a meeting was. I didn't know anything. So yeah, if I feel like it can be done in a good way.
How well did they prep you for 12-step meetings?
Who's they?
In rehab, when you were in rehab. When I was in Ridgeview, they talked about the appropriate boundaries for your sponsor. They told you he's not your doctor. If you're prescribed psych meds, take your psych meds, and don't let some guy, because people overstep bounds at 12-step fellowships all the time. So part of what they did for people that knew nothing of alcoholism at Ridgeview is they talked about you go to a 12-step meeting and they give you medical advice for your psych meds. Because I was always told AA was anti-psychiatry, which it's not. It's not. But I was predisposed not to like AA.
So there's a whole school of psychiatry that's humanistic psychology that references spiritual things as being the solution towards a person's self-actualized or becoming who they're meant to be kind of a thing. So I get what you're saying, and I think there's two sides to it. I think that on one hand, I don't think anybody is qualified to tell someone what meds they should or shouldn't be on.
Mm.
It's up to the individual.
Yeah. Mm.
But I also believe that we can be open-minded.
Yeah.
So it's I don't. Is that answer?
Yeah, I guess the answer is the question.
Yeah.
But as far as like people were just talking about, like at Ridgeview, they're talking about what to look for in a sponsor, like when you get out of here. Yeah, just stuff like that. Because they said go to meetings. Well, you go to meetings and you don't really know what to expect at the meeting. Sometimes you go to a meeting that's not well run.
Yeah, and there's also there's people that as human beings we are imperfect.
It's not called Well People Anonymous.
Well, people know.
That's not what
but
AAHA is.
But at the end of the day, if you don't want to use a substance and you're willing to like look at yourself and figure out how to solve the issue, there's no better program in my mind that facilitates that the progressively, I guess, it saved my life. Like
AA saved my life, and I'm really grateful for the program. And I'm really grateful because that was my big excuse for not going to AA.
Oh, was the idea that
was the view that they were anti-psychiatry, and without my medication, I don't really function well. So
you should.
So that was what predisposed me to just have this extremely negative view of AA. And when I was there, they were like, no. If you go to basically what they said is if you go to a bar and you don't like the bar, you didn't stop drinking. So if you go to a meeting and they're giving medical advice, it's a bullshit meeting. Find another meeting. They'll just throw the whole AA under the bus. Yeah.
I just think we get what we put into whatever it is we're looking for. So the idea that a program or an ideology could be harmful before you even understand what it is a detriment. Like, it's not good.
I completely agree. Also, I think with me, as someone who didn't want to address my drinking problem, I think that was a nice crutch. Oh, they're bad.
I mean, we will literally tell ourselves anything to rationalize what we actually want to do. And it's scary to try different things. It's scary to try new things. It's scary to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation where you don't know anybody and you're trying to make sense of this thing you can't seem to squash on your own. And you see all these people who are, it seems like they've got something. It's cult, it feels culty and weird.
Yeah.
But it's just like any synagogue, religion, or mosque you'll ever go to. There's like, any time we get together as a group and we're all about something, to me at least, I'm always like, this is a little weird. This is a little fishy. I don't understand this.
Yes. So when you left Richmond University and you decided to come home to Georgia, what did you do? What did you do when you left college?
Well, now we can. This is where we can talk a little bit about you mentioned schizophrenia.
Yeah.
I left college my junior year because I fell into a state of psychosis. Mm-hmm. And the doctors had described it as amphetamine psychosis. I'm not completely sure what actually happened to me. Mm-hmm. But, I believed I was being guided by God. I was being CD players and radios and televisions were being performed specifically for me. Mm-hmm. The girl I was dating, I thought she was stalking me. I thought she was sending friends out my dorm room. I'd run out there to check, and they'd be gone. I'd be like, oh, they fucking got away, and then go back in my dorm. So, like, I left. I remember I met with my head coach, and he was like, do you want to play football anymore? And I looked at him. I was like, I mean, I could, but I feel like I'm supposed to do something greater, and I think I need to go make music and be a rapper.
Oh, okay.
That's what I thought. And so I left and I did that, and my parents will tell you better than I can because it's so hazy, because I was being guided by numerology. I was being guided by these voices on the radio and stuff. I thought truckers were communicating where I was going. The full gamut of psychosis I experienced, and it lasted 4 months.
How much of this was because amphetamines and just not sleeping properly, going on very little sleep?
That's the thing that's like, there's no way to really tell.
Oh, okay.
There really isn't. Like, I know I personally experienced it. I know I became obsessed with trying to understand it. I ended up working at Ridgeview. One of the main reasons I went to work there after I got sober was because I needed to find out, like, what happened to me. So I needed to see other people that were going through it.
I really enjoyed taking abnormal psychology
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite classes in college.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Okay, and what? So you mentioned music being a rapper. What I loved about alcohol is it made me not feel like myself, and that's what I love about art, writing, doing voiceovers, trying to get on theater. Is it helps me? It's a drug-free escape. And do you feel that way about your music?
Yeah, and it's interesting. All artistry in itself. It started with me with music, then writing, then podcasting, filmmaking, and now rapping. The thing I work through today is like I obsess over creative things because it is a form of escape.
Do you ever obsess about creative things but then not do anything? Because I obsess about all this creative stuff, but I have a hard time getting started. Do you ever have that?
I have a hard time getting started?
Like on a project?
Not anymore.
All right.
I did it first.
So you overcame that?
Yeah, I did it first.
How did you overcome that?
I overcame it by telling myself when I had an idea, I need to write it down.
Okay.
No matter what it is. Even if I don't feel like it, I need to write it down.
All right.
That was just the very beginning.
That's good advice. Also, let's back up a little bit. When did you get sober?
I got sober May 5th, 2013.
That's awesome. And what exactly was it about that hit bottom and decided to get sober?
It's another one of those things where it's like a lot of things, I think, the inflection points in my life, like I can't really understand them, The psychosis hit. I never thought I'd be actually rapping. Like, I was so ashamed and embarrassed about everything that happened. Like, the fear of trying again took me 7 years to have the courage to try to rap again.
It's hard to get your confidence back.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be able to feel like you can defend yourself and be like, I'm a good person now. And I go ahead.
Yeah, and also, what does it mean? Like, what does that mean for me? It's like I embarrassed the hell out of myself. I scared people when I was doing it last time. What are people going to think? What do I think? Am I still crazy? Maybe the psychosis never left. All those questions, it was I had to work through it.
So you're on stage rapping, and tell me a little bit about that.
It feels unbelievable. It just feels like a dream. It's a trip.
If people wanted to look up and see your stuff, where would they find it?
Selfwillrun.com.
Selfwillrun.com?
Yeah.
All right. And when it comes to getting sober, do you go to AA and HA, or do you have what 12-step fellowships do you? Actually, forget that. I don't want to violate.
No, I don't discriminate. So like, I go to Eating Disorder Anonymous on Friday nights. I go to we're still going. I go to Tuesday nights. I go to like a meditation group thing.
All right.
Monday, and then throughout the week I'll go to AA, HA, CA. I don't discriminate at all. It's like Fight Club to me. It's like, let's learn and be human.
I am the exact same way, and I try to obey traditions, but I always slip up and blabber that I'm in AA. So I had to work this one out when I started my podcast. It's like, there's a difference between saying you have gone to meetings and then saying I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, so that there's a loophole to say I have gone to meetings, but I'm not. Okay, that
there was a 2-year period in my sobriety where I was going to meetings constantly, but was not working a program.
Okay.
I was trying to make sense if I was an alcoholic anymore. I didn't know.
Yes, that's something I flirt with the thing there. I was like, am I really? I used to think that if I just raised my self-confidence or had my medication adjusted a little, I could drink like a gentleman.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, there's got to be. It can't just be that. But yeah, now I don't think my liver will ever process alcohol properly. So if I have one, I'm closing the bar down.
Right. Yeah.
And accepting that was painful, but I really don't miss it.
Yeah, me either, at all. To me, it would. I was just. The obsession and the craving had been gone for so long. Like the idea of actually, I was like, it wasn't about me wanting to drink or not. I was just like, I don't know if I am like exuding these traits of what an alcoholic is. I don't know, or a recovered out. It was really confusing. But to answer your question before, the why I got sober, May 5th, 2013, I shot up outside of a Papa John's, and I was bringing the pizza to my parents' house to watch Survivor on Wednesday night. And I'm sitting there in the family room, and my niece is there, and she's 6 months old, and I never held her. And my mom's showing me this engagement ring, talking about how she wants to break it up and give a part to me to give to my future wife. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I viewed myself from the outside looking in, and was deeply ashamed of this guy who was sitting here with all these people that loved him and cared about him, and he didn't. All I was thinking about was being stoned and getting high. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I looked at my niece and I was like, I'm not going to be an uncle. I won't be able to be an uncle for her. I'm ashamed of myself. And that night I went home and I called a friend of mine and I told her, I was like, I'm going to detox myself. And I went a week in my room and I sweated out, and it was painful. It was difficult. By the third day, I was lucky in the sense that I had no money and there was no gas in my tank at all. So when I would call my dope dealer, it was like so sad. I remember calling him and just being like, I don't know, shit, and then hanging up. It's like, so I wanted to, but luckily I got through it. And once I got through it, and I met my dad for lunch on the 6th day, and my body had stopped hurting, but I went to meet him, and I went to meet him with the intent of trying to get some money from him, honestly. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sitting across the table from him, and I hadn't broached the subject of needing to borrow cash, and I looked him in the eyes, and I realized I couldn't lie to him anymore, and I couldn't lie to myself. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, listen, Dad, I've been relapsing, and I just got done detoxing. And he looked at me, he was like, well, what are you going to do? Because they'd already sent me to 2 treatment centers. This had been an issue for a long time. And he was like, what are you going to do? Because, they tried everything. And I was like, I guess I'm going to go to a meeting. And I went to a meeting that day. I shared in the meeting. Somebody came up to me afterwards, was like, I'm going to sponsor you. And that began my recovery. Like, it was somebody in that meeting,
Mm-hmm. Well, the gift of desperation is something that I consider. I thought I was a low bottom drunk when I was in Ridgeview. After spending 2 years going to meetings, I now realized I could have gone down a lot further. And I'm just grateful I got. You
always can.
You always can. So it's always good to hit bottom before you're, I guess, dead. So there's no way to sugarcoat it. Yeah. Well, Adam, thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story, and good luck for you in your artistic pursuits. And thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
And thank you for listening. This is Eric on The Last Taboo, and enjoy the rest of your day.